First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the June 15th meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Before I get into business, we have two new members on the commission, and my understanding is you both are going to recuse yourself from the first item on the agenda because you weren't here at the last meeting. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That first item is the request for a variance of the building setback line along high-pressure gas lines. The property is located at 208 Jane Trail, Danville, and is zoned HC. The owner applicant is Sharon Seals for McDonald's USA LLC. We had a lot of discussion at the last meeting, and I would like for McDonald's representative to come up and just give us a brief overall. We don't want to go into lengthy, nothing that we heard last time. We don't need to hear it again, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. I spoke last meeting, so I'm just going to make a little introduction here. I'm Roderick Saylor with GRW Engineers. With me, I have Sharon Sills. She's the area construction manager for McDonald's, and John Bernard behind here with real estate with McDonald's.
Henry, he was sworn last time. Do I need to re-swear him or just consider that he's still sworn?
For the sake of the record, this time if you'd swear him again, please.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the statements you're about to make are true and correct?
Yes, I do.
And state your name again.
Roderick Saylor.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the statements you're about to make are true and correct?
I do.
And state your name.
Sharon Sills.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you too. Might as well get you all at once. Raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the statements you're about to make are true and correct?
I do.
And your name?
John Barnard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess to give you a little bit of that high-level review or kind of recap of where we were, McDonald's is requesting a variance for the encroachment into the building setback off of the gas main easement at 280 Jane Trail. I've brought, I think you may have the most recent exhibits with you. I've got another exhibit. I think last meeting there was requested an area of square footage of encroachment. I brought that with us today. No further changes. We just want to kind of discuss this a little bit further and see if we can get to the approval for this afternoon.
And how much is the area that will be in the encroachment?
I will give that to you. We are decreasing the area around 200 square feet. The proposed building encroaches into the building setback 865 square feet. And the existing restaurant encroaches into that setback 1,023 square feet.
So it's actually less.
Correct. The new building will encroach less. That'll give them a little bit more area.
Question two, when did you buy that property? Approximately.
That would be for me, but I do not know. I know the building's more than 20 years old. So
Okay.
More than 20 years ago.
More than 20 years, okay. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Okay.
It looks like that the encroachment, even on the new area, it takes in nearly all of the 25-foot setback?
Correct. It's encroaching roughly an equal amount of distance. I think the new building closest point probably is a little bit closer, about 1.5 feet closer to the easement line itself, but the existing building, I guess, is probably back a little bit, but we have reduced the area of which we're in that setback that was kind of introduced into the building.
It's deeper but more narrow as far as that goes on the encroachment?
Yeah, that would be a good way of putting at it.
Roger, what's the distance from our building to the actual line?
You'll have to stand up there.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
they can't hear you.
I was asking Roger what the distance is because we asked him to look up the distance from the building to the actual pipeline itself. So we knew where we're doing construction versus where the pipe is.
The gas main, so to answer John's question, the gas main was located by the surveyor and with Kinder Morgan on property. I don't see those representatives here today with our surveyor. The line is essentially situated directly in the middle of their 50-foot easement. So the line is 25 feet off the easement line, and our building is an additional 4 feet beyond that. So we are 29 feet from the actual gas line.
Let me understand that. You said that you were encroaching on the easement for the gas people?
No. If I most misspoke, the nomenclature back and forth between building setback and easement has been, I want to make sure that we are very clear that we are not encroaching into the easement. We are more than 4 feet off of the easement line. We are encroaching into the building setback line.
Yes, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We may have more, but
Yep,
right now
I'll hang
we're okay.
around.
Is there anyone else that needs to speak to this that wasn't here, and we would need to keep it very short? Okay, open for discussion.
I want to hear from Kinder Morgan.
Kinder Morgan's not here.
I have some concerns, because the last time when Kinder Morgan was here, they indicated that they would guarantee that there were no problems for the future in regard to the safety and welfare of the community. I fail to understand how they could guarantee. I don't think you can, from my perspective. And secondly, if they are, then it would seem to me that they would be willing to accept the liability for such as well.
So I can't really speak for them and their statements, but I can say that the purpose of that easement, or any utility easement, is to protect the service line, whatever the utility may be, that is located within that easement. We are not going to be encroaching into that easement with respect to the proposed development. So we won't be coming, as far as McDonald's construction work is concerned, we won't be putting that line further in danger, I guess I should say, than it would be just sitting there in the ground.
Pretty much like it is right now.
Correct.
Why was there a push toward this easement versus push toward the other utility? KU.
So I guess why is the building further to the south on your sheet than to the north? It's a function of multiple different things. We do have, well, we had a very small buildable space that we had to actually kind of work with to avoid the legal easements that you run into with respective utilities. Typically, I would probably classify this as a special case with respect to Danville and having the building setback being also on the property. Typically, that easement is what you're seeking out to avoid at all cost in development and in laying out the site. We laid out the site in the best manner to allow for the circulation that they needed, to get the trash enclosure located, to get the right number of parking spaces. There's several criteria that we look at, but making sure that we're outside of those easements is the primary concern. So once you lay out all the other parts and pieces of the property, this is kind of where the building starts gravitating towards a little bit closer to that easement line versus another, but it was really threading a needle to get the building set in there just to make it work.
Is there any sort of margin of error from the engineer's point of view on building? Or margin of change, I should say?
No, we would not anticipate any margin error. These are, they're drawn electronically in AutoCAD, and we give the contractors northern and eastern or exact coordinates where the buildings will be located, and they have to hit those. If they don't hit that, then something else on the property is going to be out of whack. You'll end up with a parking space that's too short, too narrow, whatever it may be. So it will be placed per the coordinates and per the drawing as you have.
But that does establish a little bit of margin with the, maybe dropping a parking spot or something?
Not with respect to, I guess, getting it away from that easement. I wouldn't, you're talking about the long end of the building, so if you start encroaching into one parking space, you're going to encroach into a whole row of parking spaces, not necessarily shortening it in one direction or the other, but the direction that we'd have to shift in order to obtain that would be literally encroaching into the row of parking, making them shorter, which would violate other codes within the zoning ordinance.
And I just want to add another reason for kind of the position of the building, which is we're really almost building right back in from that perspective of the front of the building, the same place, but the ability to add a side-by-side drive-through. So for you folks that have been to that site, and hopefully you'll come back again and again, it's getting our customers through there and improving the profitability of that restaurant. By not adding the side-by-side, we're really limiting our ability to generate the income that we know that that site and the great folks of Danville and anyone passing through generously visiting that site. So when you look at the new drawings, you can see that a lot of what we've done is simply to have the ability to add the side-by-side drive-through onto there. So I think that goes to a little bit of your conversation, maybe concern around the parking.
The
so.
drive-by dive doesn't bother me. I mean, to me, it doesn't play into the equation. It's the building, to me, that, because, I mean.
Yeah, and,
just
you know,
pay
I guess what we really wanted to say, we totally looked at where the building was, and so we're not really asking for anything that we don't currently have today, because the bulk of our ad will be on the other side of the building. But it is an amazing site. It's very, very busy. And, you know, without the variance, it certainly limits our ability to do business as general. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Donna?
I have one for legal counsel, Mr. Smith. I'm curious, since this setback was established after the building was built, what liability, if we were to approve this variance, what liability would the city and county have for having given that variance at this point in time? Because there was a reason for that being done, whenever that was done, I can't remember the year. So
2004.
my concern is there liability, since we're giving a variation that has been established after the building was there, does that become a liability for the city and county?
Ms. Fairchild, this body has insurance which would protect it from anything, and that insulates you all. As far as the city, seems to me that they're just creating another situation that's like what has been there for 20 years now, and so I don't think that there's any increase in your liability from what was already existing on this site before. I don't think that this variance increases your liability because it's just replicating basically the building that was on the site.
And you're saying McDonald's has insurance for liability?
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sure.
I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do.
I'd love to be the
Funny
broker.
things happen these days.
I'm sure they do.
Yes, we do.
Okay, any other questions for them?
The adjustment for this site, each and every situation, because we have a whole string of property, and Danville is laced with pipeline, pretty much. But each individual situation would stand on its own merit. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the more that I think about this, this body is protected by governmental immunity. This is kind of a discretionary function that you all are doing here. And so there's a lot of case law out there that protects you from any being held responsible for your exercise of discretionary power. If you're not making this decision in utmost negligence, then you're not going to be held liable for the results of it.
Well,
And
and
that's well established.
If
in courts.
anything, the ordinance was passed in 2004 after they owned the property, and they're encroaching less with the new request than what they were with the present building. So,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I can't see that we would be doing anything that would make ourselves more liable for our
Right.
decision,
If I
whichever way
could
we
try
go.
just one more time to explain it, you're protected in making good faith judgment calls, and the results of those good faith judgment calls, you can't be held liable for. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you. Any questions, anything from anyone in the audience? Okay. Question, guys? Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we go ahead and approve the variance for it.
That we approve the variance, and I think Henry may have a couple of suggestions to add to that.
Yes, please.
I do. If you're going to adopt the findings that approve the variance, I would ask that you add some language from sections 3.9.3.3.5 and 3.9.3.3.6 of the zoning ordinance. Specifically, that this is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, that it's in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, and that the general purpose of the comp plan is met, that it won't be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public. And if you agree with that, then you can just incorporate those sections of the zoning ordinance.
And that there was one other that we talked about, if it was passed, that they own the property prior to the 2004 zone, or variance, no, not variance,
Let me know if this.
Imposed setback.
imposed setback, right.
Okay. Section 10 of the findings says the existing structure was built well before enactment of the zoning
Okay.
ordinance's 25-foot setback.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah,
satisfy that?
that's
Okay.
good.
I have one more other question. Should there be any sort of percentage-wise statement in there?
Pardon?
For the amount of encroachment on that setback? I don't want to kill the setback, I just would like to
We could,
do the right thing.
you could certainly amend the findings to include a statement like that. Do you have a solid percentage number? Do we have a certain number that you're hoping to incorporate?
Maybe that their encroachment was less than the current building, something like that.
Sure.
You can maybe state the square footages which are provided
Right.
in that submission from the engineer.
It was less than,
Well, my point being is that the major encroachment is really narrow. And that percentage that, where they can still get to the pipeline and everything easily.
yeah.
Because
Well-
the point comes down in the building.
Well, and they still have 25 feet on either
Exactly.
side.
Exactly.
Do you want to use that figure? I mean, the existing building encroaches, gotta read,
1,000.
because it's small, I printed it small, sorry. It's 1,023 square feet, and the proposed building footprint will encroach in that 25-foot building setback, 865
65.
square feet.
And Ms. Green, if your concern is about this variance leaving the barn door open, paragraph 11 in the findings 4 says that the variance is based upon and strictly confined to the present circumstances.
Okay, there's the rub for me.
Okay.
Donna, I think Donna had some questions also.
Well, you can call me a skeptic if you like. I have problems with the approval on the way 12 is written. It relates back to my previous issue about their Kinder Morgan guaranteeing against adverse effects. And also in our last meeting, Kinder Morgan, as I recall, and it's in the minutes that they indicated they would have someone on site during the construction period monitoring for safety. And I really feel that that should be put in writing.
I think that's state law. Am I not
Is it?
right?
I
That they
think- I
have to
would
have
think so,
someone
yes.
there, yes.
That
Well, it
utility-
depends. I think if you remember, it depended on the
How close?
distance from their line where the construction was taking place. That's their standard. I don't know that, zoning definitely doesn't have a standard about that construction. I don't know that it's state law, but that was the Kinder Morgan standard that I understood them to speak about.
Right. They said they would be there. That if it was so close, they would be, they're observing, and then if it got even closer, they would be there literally on top of the project, right, looking at them every minute, so.
It is a state law that they must be there or not. It is not.
It's
So-
not?
I couldn't confirm that. Maybe Henry could, but.
And I'm sorry, these days, the written word to me is more important than the verbal.
I don't know if we should have guarantee in there. I don't think anybody can guarantee
Future.
the future. I mean, obviously, they're not gonna want anything to have any adverse effect on the health, safety, welfare of the people, but at the same time, accidents happen, things happen, and guarantee holds them to, we're putting something in there that maybe it should be worded a little differently. Henry, I'm not sure how that wording should go.
How about this? That representatives of the company spoke at the hearing, comma, and suggested a small probability of adverse effect upon public health.
That I'm much more comfortable with.
As for them being on site, I don't know that we can really bind them to that in the form of this, especially with them not here today, so.
I think they want to be there for their own protection,
I
to
think
be
you're
honest.
absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
Yes, question.
Do we have a mechanism by which you will inform the pipeline owner when construction
Oh,
begins?
they have to.
We've been in constant contact with them even during the preliminary site investigation phase, and they will be, they were brought out when we did the survey to locate their line. They'll be fully in the loop as we move forward with construction.
Good.
And Mr. Miles, there's also another process to this that really hasn't been mentioned much here, but this also goes before the Planning and Zoning Commission for site plan review and approval before permits are issued for construction. And at that time, the gas company again will sign off on the location of the footprint of the building.
Any other discussion? Who seconded that motion that Linda made? Anybody? I think we kind of got away from a second there. Do I have a second?
Could I just hear what has been changed in the acceptance statement?
Sorry, changed in
The
which?
changes, there have been several changes, and I'm kind
Can
of
you-
unclear on that.
Okay,
Can
so
you
the
read
changes,
those?
as I have them here, are adding those required bits of language from the zoning ordinance, sections 3.9.3.3.5 and .6. Those talk about it being the minimum variance, about no injurious effects upon the neighborhood, et cetera. It's required language from the zoning ordinance. So we'll add those to the end. And then paragraph 12 says, representatives from Kinder Morgan Company, responsible for the pipeline, spoke at the hearing, suggesting a small probability of adverse effect upon public health, et cetera.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Now do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The second item on the agenda is Plank on Main is requesting a conditional use permit for outdoor seating in the back of their property. The property is located at 219 West Main Street, Danville, and is zoned DT for downtown. The owner is W&C Properties, and the applicants are Chris and Wendy White. Mr. White?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm the statements you're about to make are true and correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and tell us about, in your name?
Chris White.
Okay, and tell us about your request.
Hopefully mine's not nearly as complicated as some of this. So we own the buildings at 217 and 219 West Main, and my wife runs Plank on Main. And if you go into the rear of the property, we have a passion for, we've invested a significant amount with our 219 property, trying to bring back the rear properties. We think there's a lot of potential from the backside of Main Street properties, especially when you look at other communities that have successfully driven reinvestment. And when we looked at the 217 property next door, as the Cottles were selling off the 217 and 215, Tim McDaniel and I split those properties, and he bought the 215 and we bought the 217. One of our major attractions to it was there was a outdoor enclosed by three sides of building space that really doesn't exist downtown. And when we go to downtowns, we love to go outdoors and find outdoor spots. So that was one of our attractions to procuring the property. When we did, we started a cleanup process in that rear courtyard area. It had sat for a number of years, quite frankly. It was a bit of a clean out of a trash buildup and overgrown shrubs and others. And we also found drainage issues in there. So from the three buildings, the rooftops that had all the water had come into the foundation back of those buildings. So we had United Structural come in, fix our drainage up and get the drainage and water out from there. But also had come back in and put 15 kind of their outdoor seating chairs in that area after we cleaned it up, put some nice plantings in, and 2 tables back there. And our clients had been enjoying it and reading books and taking their coffee and whatever and sitting back there. And quite honestly, we had no idea that putting those tables on our property back there, we needed to come through this process. So we are now here a little bit after the fact, which is why you have actual photographs of it sitting there.
But yeah, so that's a little bit of a description, and I'm happy to build upon it in more detail.
I have a couple of questions. How does this affect the parking in the back of your store? Do you have any back there?
Yes, we do. So behind this area, we lease 3 spots there, and then also 6 spots from the city that we lease behind it. And if you're familiar back there, most of it is private parking. There's one strip of the public domain parking, which I said we lease 6 spots out of and are on the waiting list for more. But the private spaces are McDaniel's and ourselves and Brian with Chase and Ted with DOE are the 4 really own the bulk of the property spaces back there.
Do any of your customers park back there? Do they use the rear door?
Some do, but most of them are on Main Street in the mornings, and some people park in the back in those spots for our entry. But I don't count specifically.
What about trash
but
pickup? Is that in the rear or the front?
in the front, we have to wheel the
Okay.
trash around front, which we'd love to see it in the rear, but that's a, that's a separate thing. We don't like them sitting on Main Street.
You don't have any proposed changes to lighting or,
No, we have some very low voltage LED little string lights up, but our hours are 7 to 7. So until the fall, it's really not even turned on. We have extended hours like event weekends. So when brass band is going on, that's probably the most that the courtyard actually has been used is the evenings of brass band and people coming back and just sitting and relaxing and cooling off from walking around in the heat and so on. But
you're not proposing to add additional screening or signage of any
no,
kind?
there's no intent of that now. If it's a necessary item from a screening, we try to put some planters to confine, like to mentally confine the space for people, but keep it in a visually appealing way without, but we're not proposing any fencing or any of that kind of stuff back
Any
there.
questions from any of the board members?
I would like to, I'm sorry. First, I would like to comment on how nice it looks back there.
Oh, thank
I
you.
looked at it, and I was kind of shocked that it was already there, but, and that's a question I have, not to put you on the defensive, but
Yeah.
in terms of administration of city doing their job. You said you didn't know you needed to get approval.
Yeah.
Is that because the city doesn't give you information, or you just, how did that happen?
It's just, so when we went through, we have 2 tables out front. We went through that process, and my understanding was we were putting 2 tables on city property, right? Those sidewalks belong to the city. Whenever we procured that back there, I mean, people have other random tables and chairs behind their properties. It was never, obviously our intent was we were doing a great thing, right? And investing and making it look nice and putting tables out for our clients and creating a space that, in our mind, and from even a Main Street program and everything that we're trying to drive, we need some more vibrancy and outdoor space.
That it does look very nice. It does give me a question, however, that's a pretty narrow path through there, and as I understand it, the business next door, that's their means of egress.
Yes, which is the building that we lease, right, which is that building. We own that building that you're speaking of. There is a clearly 3-foot walkway left going back through there. We even put a ramp in for them to get their goods, in and out for Beth. We lease that to Beth, but Beth and Circe lease that space from us in that Main Street down floor or downstairs of 217. So yes.
My concern was about it possibly being blocked if people don't put chairs back or tables back, and you did have an issue
Oh,
if it
yeah,
created problems with people.
Yeah, we've
getting
never
out
had
of
a
the
chair
building.
moved yet, but who knows? But yes, look, there are renters, and we want to make sure that they're happy in there too. So
Thank you.
yeah, we tried to improve the access. Actually, it was part of our goal because it was a bit tricky before.
Is there any question about access for emergency personnel, fire and emergency?
Yeah, there should not be. Matter of fact, if you asked me, it's a much cleaner vision and view and issue than what was there before with, there's a lot, but that's my view, but.
Did this change push your delivery to the front, or do you take delivery from the back still?
Oh, yeah, all of our deliveries come in the back. DOE's deliveries, our deliveries, Circe's deliveries are all rear delivery based, yeah.
Yes, and this doesn't affect the delivery
No, doesn't at all.
for anyone?
No, that's right, yeah, I would be hard pressed to think it has any impact on anybody. And if it did, somebody just tell us, work on making it right.
I'm sorry.
Would this be a permanent change?
Conditions go with the property, so yes. It would be a permanent change. But with any conditional use permit, if you left and someone else came in and the conditional use is there, but if they start abusing that and not using it properly, we could revoke that, am I right?
You're right, there's yearly review of
Right.
conditional use permits.
So,
Okay, as long as there's review of it.
yes. Okay. Anyone, any more questions for Mr. White? Thank you, sir.
I'll have one more
Oh,
question.
one more.
Yeah.
How many people do you think you can accommodate back there?
We have 15 seats, individual seats, and then 2 tables that are 4 to 6. So you have 20, 25 people. And I'll be quite honest, right, again, with it having been there now almost 2 months, we'll average, say, 4 to 6 people usually are sitting out there at one given time. The most populated it had been was during Brass Band Festival, where we probably had 15 or so back there. But yeah, 25-ish is kind of
So it's
maximum
never been really full?
capacity.
Never
Yeah,
been?
we've not had it full
Okay.
up to this point, but I would say 25 is seating capacity of what's back there, of, you know, what I passed, and we currently have no intentions of changing that.
I
Any
think,
other- Any other questions?
I just wanted to let you know, basically, there was one set of colored photographs submitted,
passed them
and they've
around.
been
We
passed
passed them
around.
around.
I think it would be interesting to have seen maybe a picture of that prior to.
Oh, yeah, I can.
You know,
can
I
send it
mean,
over. Yeah, yeah,
generally,
yeah.
people don't go behind the buildings, but I would like to
We all hope
say
that
that
more
that's
people
probably a
will,
huge
right?
improvement, like for what had been there, it'd be nice to have had a.
Yeah, yeah, we do.
like a
We have before and after,
photos, so.
and through process photos, because it's, as part of our Heart of Danville work, there is a focus on how do we make more of these spaces more customer inviting and patron inviting, not only the front side of Main Street, but the back side. And there's just such potential in those spaces that,
Yeah, and the infill of those existing uses, I mean, that's always encouraged, you know, to be able to help downtown thrive.
Right. Any other questions for Mr. White? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? If not, I have a motion.
Me again?
Linda is making, based on the findings of fact,
Based on the findings of fact, and as long as there is a continuous review of this change with this property, and it is established and is used as intended in this adjustment, then I vote to approve it.
did you get those, did you get those changes? Did you get that? Okay. And have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you.
all right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And the third item, we have a request for a variance of the building setback lines along high-pressure gas lines per section 5.1.11 of the Danville zoning ordinance. The property is located at 2596 South Danville Bypass, Danville, and is zoned highway commercial. The owner applicant is Greer Land Company. Kevin,
Good morning.
good morning.
My name is Kevin Nesbitt. I'm a local attorney. I'm here representing Greer Land Company. And I've got Jihad Halani here. He's with Vision Engineering, and he'll present some exhibits and take any questions you may have about this request.
Do we need to go on and get him sworn?
Yes.
Before we start?
I think he's trying to set up an easel here.
Okay. Would you raise your right hand?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you swear and affirm the statement you're about to make are true and correct?
That's correct.
And
Yes,
state your
ma'am.
name again?
Jihad Halani.
Okay. Do you need to spell that for the record, maybe?
Yes.
I think
You have it?
we have that.
Okay.
I have it.
All right, thank you. All
All
right.
right. So I'd like to put this exhibit. Is there any
Okay.
preference?
I want to put it over here so they can see better.
And if you need to move that microphone on the podium, it's, you can take that off of there if you need to relocate it to where you are.
So I have some also. Yeah, there's 2 exhibits. All right, well, again, my name is Jihad Halani, and I am the design engineer on this project. Basically, this request is similar to the request that the board has heard this morning. I just want to give you a little bit of orientation about or description of the property by itself. So on exhibit number 2 in front of you, I just want to show some of the colors, kind of give you an idea what these colors mean. The red color is represent easements on site, and the blue color represent the 25 feet setback line from the easement, from the gas easement, and the gray color represent how much buildable area will be remain on this property. So the two main easements on this side, there is 2 gas line. On the north, there is 50 feet gas line easement. On the south, there is 30 feet gas line easement. And also there is Kentucky KU transmission line, 100 feet easement along the north side of the gas line. This will be, so basically this is the KU transmission line. This is the 50 feet gas easement, and this is the 30 feet gas easement. So plus there's some other, and also this property is bounded by the Danville bypass, which has 40 feet setback line. Also by US 127, 40 feet setback line, and also by Jane Trail, which is the 40 feet setback line. So plus there's some other easements related to sanitary sewers and typical overhead electric and water line easement, which is, you see them on every site. So in total, so these are the main constraints. You have 2 gas line easement, 1 Kentucky transmission line, and 3 40 feet setback line. So, and the site used to be the King Buffet site. So out of the total area of the site is 1.96 acres. Out of the 1.96 acres, there's only available 0.324. So 16.5% of the property is available to be developed. And also, as you can see, the blue color, as I mentioned earlier, it's the additional 25 feet setback line from the gas line. The area of this 25 feet setback line is 0.55 acres, so more than what's available to develop this 25 feet setback line. They added to the site on top of the other constraint on this site. So that will lead us to the second exhibit, which is exhibit number 3. If you look at your sheet, please. On exhibit number 3, I just put side by side for visual illustration the King Buffet site and also what we are proposing. The King Buffet site used to be 10,244 square feet, the building area. The areas that encroach into the 25 feet setback easement were 3,859 square feet. And also, if you look at the south side, the building is almost on the gas line easement, so totally inside the 25 feet. Whereas the proposal in front of you, we are proposing almost 6,500 square feet of buildable area. There's going to be a building. We are encroaching into the 25 feet setback line, 2,152 square feet, which is, if you take the 3,859, what we're proposing to encroach is, we are reducing it by 45%. So we have 45% less encroachment into the easement as before, assuming I did the math correctly. All right, the other site constraints that I did not mention is that, and the reason of the postponement, one of the main reasons of the postponement from being in front of this board last month, that we have a development, we have some site concept we submitted, we went through TRC, and the gas company expressed some concern. So we went, revised the site, we sent them our drawing, we did it exactly the way I like to see it. So what I'm saying is that basically we remove driving aisle, we adjust our driving location, and the way the gas company tells I gave us the thumb up, this is the way we like to see it, and this is what's in front of you today. So we made all this adjustment based on them. And based on my conversation with them, these are the constraints I told us I need to basically to live by or to follow. There should not be no fill at all on the gas line. So as you can tell, the gas line is in the middle of the property. There's two of them, one on the north, one on the south. So we're going to design our site with no additional fill on top of the gas line. And then the question was raised earlier, how do I monitor the gas line? Actually, there's a concrete cap on top of this gas line, and then the gas company told us we have to work around this concrete cap, and this is the way they kind of monitor the gas line. So we have to work around it. And also, as soon as we finish our construction drawings, we have to submit it to them for them to review, and then if they have any comments, we'll address it in that regard. So we believe we have been communicating with them, and we did everything they asked us for. And in front of you today is just, we'd like to request this waiver, or this, to kind of reduce it to 3 feet from 25 feet setback to 3 feet setback line. And if you have any question, we'd be glad to answer it.
Could you repeat the amount of encroachment per square footage on that? I remember the numbers, but
It's on here.
it's on there?
Yes.
Okay.
2,152 square feet. It used to be 3,859 square feet.
I guess my biggest concern is that you knew when you purchased the property what the setbacks were and what the easement was. And that makes me a little uncomfortable, to be honest. I mean, you knew when you bought it that the easements were there and that the setback was there because it was put into effect in the 2004 ordinance.
Well, if you look at the non-conforming use section, they could put that building back and on that footprint, and then you're right back where you were. And actually, this is getting it closer. If you look at what the proposed condition would be, is it gets it closer to having the 50-foot setback on the south boundary. On the right now, Kinder Morgan only bought and paid for a 30-foot easement, and they're getting closer to their 50-foot that they have on the north side. And if you look at the structure, the footprint that the non-conforming footprint they could go back to, it's right on there. And this is really greatly improving the situation.
And another thing, which is I agree 100%, is that this building is deteriorating with time. So sometimes somebody's going to come back and say, well, we want to do something different with this building. Need to be demolished and something else need to be built on. So sooner or later we have to be, if somebody has to be in front of this board asking for the same thing we are asking right now. And if the building is in bad shape, and that's why it get demolished.
Oh, I know that former building was in
Yeah.
horrible shape.
Yes, ma'am. And this is and the location of this property is a great location, and also this is a piece of property has been underutilized the way it was before. Right now, this will be a great improvement for the site and better utilization of the property, given how much constraint there is on it.
Understand, you are the developers, correct?
I am the engineer.
Okay. But you are going to develop the property and then lease it out, is that correct?
Well, it would be either leased or sold.
Because I see a lease sign on the property currently.
Right. I think what the developer's looking for is obviously you look to make a profit, and it depends on what either somebody wants to lease or somebody wants to buy. Different companies like different things. Some don't want to own property, some do.
So at this point, we don't know what would be going in there,
No,
correct?
not necessarily, but whoever the actual user, of course, the building would be, as you've heard, with the McDonald's, this would be built exactly according to specs with all the scientific gear they have now. They can get it down to the inch on where they locate the building. And as to the question about Kinder Morgan, I can tell you we've developed this exactly as they've requested, and they're very protective of their easements. So if you get anywhere close to that, they're going to be on site and watching what you do. I know a farmer friend 20 years ago had a backhoe out on his land, and one of the Kinder Morgan or Texas Eastern planes flew over. They got a little visit from a Texas Eastern truck. He hadn't dug a shovel full of dirt, but came out to see what his intentions were because he had a backhoe blade out near their easement.
So they were on site when the building was removed this time?
Yes.
Yeah, we communicate with them, yes, ma'am. And I believe we know the first building was going to be, as it's going to be a sit-down
I'm
restaurant.
sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
The first building is going to be a sit-down restaurant, and we cannot say the name just for I don't know how to say it.
So
Well,
you do know what's going on?
I've heard about 10 different restaurants, so surely it's gonna be one of them.
One of them, yeah.
This is what we need.
And this will be one of the condition. If it gets granted, then they will move forward. If they cannot fit their buildings, they're going to look somewhere else, I guess.
So you're saying that you're locked into the footprint of the building because of your leasing?
That's correct. And Kevin may not be aware of that footprint, so.
What's the reason that the one smaller proposed can't be pushed forward?
It cannot be because of stacking, of cars stacking. It's like,
The parking?
You
Us.
line up for the oil change.
it's more like an oil change.
It's, well, like you said, stacked lanes, just like the drive-through lanes at McDonald's. You get in line.
You can't stack them from the
Hopefully.
other side?
Hopefully, people are lined up to wait their turn to go through.
But you can't adjust that to stack them from the other side?
Yes, but we're trying to stay farther because this gas line has already 50 feet easement. Then it has wider easement than the one on the south side. This is number one reason. And then the second reason is that also if somebody coming from Jane Trail and they want to make 90 degrees, they have to, it's a sharp radius to kind of come back to line up with the stacking, well as they get into the entrance, they can line up directly and they can take which directions they want to take after they leave. So this is the two reasons.
Any other questions?
And we're good with signage and lighting and all that sort of stuff?
Yes, ma'am.
Your signage and lighting would confirm with
100% to
Yeah,
the
with
ordinance.
city
requirement.
ordinance. So,
I'll
right,
point
that's
out
not
that
for
if you do approve this, then it goes to planning and zoning for site plan approval. And, of course, sign that, which would
Any
include signage.
variation to signage or lighting would have to come back to us anyway if they was wanting a variance on it, so.
That's correct.
Madam Chair, I do not feel comfortable in making any decision today. Maybe some of you can absorb all of this information, looking at it cold. And we have several new board members who are really fresh. And I'm wondering if or is it possible to make a motion that we delay a vote on this until the entire committee or commission has the ability to review the documents and carefully study the issues that are
We can do
presented to
that,
us?
but I would like to delay that motion until we get all the,
Okay.
until we hear from everyone that wants to speak today, if there's somebody else that would like to speak. Do you have more questions?
I had
for
another
them?
question.
Okay.
The small building, you say is going to be an oil change?
That's correct.
Okay, is there any kind of depth to, I mean, are you going to dig deeper for that kind of building?
Well, you normally
What do you
dig
mean?
down. They
No.
normally dig.
Oh, no,
dig a
no.
pit. They normally dig a pit.
They have to dig.
But it isn't that large, is it?
Yeah, it's not that large, yes, ma'am.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Any
that's
other
good
questions for
point.
either of these
I
gentlemen?
did not think about it.
We may have more, but for right now, is there anyone else that would like to speak from the audience? Okay. Any more questions? Okay, now Donna, it's time for your motion.
Again, I hope I
Just
remember.
that we table it.
I move that we table any decision on the variance request by the Greer Company until the commission has an ability to further study the issues involved and have knowledge of what we're voting on before we vote.
Do I hear a second?
A second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, we will have it on next month.
Thank you so much.
What was that date?
Date,
19th or something? I'm not sure.
I'm sorry.
I'll get that for you. at the
August
office.
17th is the third Thursday. So August 17th.
Thank you much.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second? All in favor? Any opposition? All right.